What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Post-game party preseason edition, joined by both Connor Rogers and Will Parkinson. We got a full house on a Saturday afternoon. Somehow the three of us are married and recording a preseason reaction podcast at 3 in the afternoon. But the Jets win 20-17. A clean, generally pretty positive preseason game where almost no starters played, right? The Jets sat 28 players. Couple different things to talk about here. Connor, how you doing? How you feeling? Give us your quick initial thoughts, and then Will, hit us with the same.
It was good, right? It's always good to have football back, and it's especially for a team that an established roster. There's so much veteran talent. I like that the Jets didn't even try to squeeze something out of their higher end second string guys. Like Sherwood, Nash, and Davis didn't even suit up for this game. They looked at it and said, let's get the young guys work. Let's get the guys that really are camp bodies an extended chance. And I think overall, they looked solid for a first preseason game, right? There was some penalties. There was some, obviously questionable decisions. But overall, what you care about in this game is, does Olu look the part? I thought his run blocking really stood out, which was, that's not what he was known for coming out of college. I thought he looked really good. And I've heard he's looked good in camp run blocking. I thought the young running backs all looked really, really good. Obviously, Braylon Allen is somebody that he's a downhill physical runner. Isaiah Davis has a little more versatility. Izzy's behind a really bad offensive line unit at that point. And he found some yards out there on the field. And then Leonard Taylor looked like the guy as a sophomore, not last year, the year before that was really explosive on that Miami D-line and could have been a first-round pick, and instead goes undrafted. He didn't look like the same athlete his final year of college. He looked great in this game. So there's some positive things to take away. But like you said, Joe, just not enough key guys played that you have a reaction or an overreaction to anything. But it's good to see the depth guys get work.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with some of the guys in the Jets locker room this morning. Oh yeah, no one's really suiting up. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna have an interesting afternoon. 12 o'clock kickoff kind of felt like watching Big Ten Saturday, and watching two bad Big Ten teams. I thought the biggest thing today was some of these guys, especially the second year guys. Me and Dan talked about it yesterday. JBC, for example, who's had a really nice summer, someone we saw literally none of last year. What's he look like in a game? Because practice reps are practice reps, and they're obviously meaningful. But I thought he had a really nice day. And Connor, you pointed out too, like, yeah, he got beat on the first big deep ball, but like came back some PBUs.
It was a great throw and catch too. Yeah, right? Like at least he was stride for stride.
Jane Daniels is not a scrub. He is very much the second overall pick. You mentioned the running backs. Obviously, you wanted to look out there. Jason Brownlee was the guy who really quiet start to camp, kind of concerning almost. Where you're like, hey man, you rated this team last year. This room, isn't that much better than it was a year ago. Like, what's kind of going on? And started to build some really nice rapport with Tyrod Taylor. And then, obviously, Summer of Peasley, hit some with a really nice ball. Emmanuel Forbes, by the way, might just have to pack up shop.
I mean, at what point? Like, here's the question. Who can Emmanuel Forbes cover? Yeah. Genuinely. Who the fuck can Emmanuel Forbes cover at this point?
Garrett Wilson's one thing. Jason Brownlee dusting you with 5 yards of separation as a big body guy. Like, not ideal. Obviously, the Jets win and, get some Adrian Martinez-Strevler, work at the end. But as you mentioned, I just felt like no big injuries. Can the young guys either, Corley had some nice moments. I texted you guys at camp 2 weeks ago. Watching him catch punts was really tough to watch. And then today was even worse.
This is not natural.
Yeah, he just has no idea what he's doing. And frankly, but you also saw some of the ability after the catch at times. So again, I think it's a nice win. That's not really the point, but it was just like, can some of these young guys build on a nice summer, show it in game action, and then go into next week and build on it again? Can JBC go out there again next week? Can we see Braylon Allen stack another day? That's really kind of what this kind of whole thing comes down to when you're not going to play your starters.
I'm more fascinated than ever by the idea of some package that Braylon Allen and Breece are effectively on the field to get. I just think Braylon Allen is too, I'm not going to say gifted because let's not get absolutely insane, but he brings something to the offense that we've been dying for. I mean, that physical nature, that big body, really the body blows that wear guys out over the game, the ability to, kind of get the outside working with Breece and the downhill running game working with Braylon Allen and how you run fakes off of that and deception off that. I think that he clearly looks the part, and it's funny to say, like, this was a guy at 17 years old, looked the part in the Big Ten. So it's not a surprise that the NFL at 20 years old is literally not very intimidating to him. But I think we're crossing the point here, guys, where Braylon Allen can't be. It's a nice safety blanket to have if the worst happens with Brees again. I think he needs to have some kind of rotation in this offense.
Yeah, he looked like a starter playing with backups when he was out there, and he gave off that like 2009, 2010 Jets energy on that drive, just like pummeling people. And I think the Jets are going to run the ball enough where you can find a way to get him out there and find a way to get him consistent action. He's very clearly going to be the backup running back. I thought Davis had some nice moments. Clearly a very different style player, had the nice catch and conversion on third down. What's also like good for the rest of the offense is both Peasley and Martinez seem relatively competent for preseason quarterbacks. They're not unmitigated disasters. Peasley looked really sharp and kept the chains moving. And like, that's how you get a good rep for Brownlee. It's how you get good reps for Davis. It's how you get good reps for the offensive line. Like, I don't know what he's going to be. He's going to be a practice squad stash quarterback. Maybe he's a long-term backup project, but the offense looked normal-ish when he was out there. So that was encouraging on offense. And then defensively, I think Leonard Taylor won the day, right? He had 2 tackles for a loss. He had a sack. He also looked like a starter out there with a bunch of backups. Did not have like, you'd expect a guy like Clemens to look more like that, who's like played a ton the first 2 years. But Taylor, to me, we thought he was going to make the team anyway. It's like a day like today is like, you're on the roster. Like you're making the 53. Like, I don't know if you're going to be active right away, but you're going to make the team. And our guy JPC felt like he was involved in every single play, which is good. I mean, they need depth on the back end in the secondary. Saw a couple nice moments for Stiggers here or there, but JPC was really the backup secondary player who I think made a nice impression, and probably a guy who should be able to stick on the roster. So I guess the real question is going to be now as we go into the second preseason game, because this game had very Hall of Fame game energy. What level of starters are going to play in that game? Are we going to see a big step up? Or are the Jets just going to be like, look, like our starters are going to play in the joint practices and we're going to have another 28 guys inactive next week? Like, I don't really know what the benefit is of like Garrett Wilson playing 2 series with Tyrod Taylor next week. Like what are we really getting out of that? I wasn't even thrilled that Tyrod played a full 2 series in this game. I was thrilled that Tittman had no botched snaps. Quietly, I know that's not something to be celebrating, but the fact that it wasn't a thing was a good thing. So Connor, a week from now, they play the Panthers at a more normal time, Saturday night. How do you handle the roster for that game? Who plays, who doesn't play, or is it very similar to today?
You bring up the great point about the joint practices. In a normal year where I've, really voiced my feelings about too many of them and the Jets scheduled too many of them, but they already did that. Like there's no really sense of acting like it's changing. So with that factored in, I would almost operate somewhat the same with a little bit more guys playing. Like Garrett Wilson had a field day at the joint practice against the Commanders. If all those, and Rodgers didn't practice. So now that's another ramp up phase that Rodgers missed. It's not a big deal. I don't care. But now Rodgers needs that practice against a non-Jets defense before playing in a game, which we don't even think he's going to play in the preseason. But if he does, this would be step one, and then I wouldn't play him until the last game if you're going to play him at all. And I would treat a lot of the guys like that. I don't think there's a lot of veteran starters that should play in the second game, and that include like the offensive line's tricky, right? Because we don't think Tyron Smith's going to play. He doesn't really practice that much, but you like them to get a few reps together to gel as a unit in live action. Once again, the joint practices can do a lot of these things. Like I wouldn't be playing Breece Hall. I wouldn't be playing Garrett Wilson. Obviously, Mike Williams is still coming back from injury. So all the high-end skill guys, I wouldn't play Tyler Conklin, right? Like, what does Tyler Conklin need to show? I don't think you're going to see a ton of Rucker. Maybe he suits up for game 2 and plays a little game 3 as well. The difference for me would be the Sherwoods, Ashton Davis. Like, those are the guys that I would think about playing the second game, but I'm not flipping the script for starters. I mean, Michael Carter, DJ Reed, and Sauce Gardner. Like, how much preseason should they play? If anything, it's 2 series, the last game. The one that maybe he wants to get his feet back under him is Chuck Clark, right?
I was just going to say that.
Right? Like, there's guys where every case is a little different. Chuck Clark might want to get his feet back under him, and that's a conversation between the coach and the player just to kind of ramp up differently than everyone else. But I don't think a ton changes because of all these joint practices and where the ramp-ups are, and that most of this defense has already played together. Right? So Clark's a guy that needs to get infused. Javon Kinlaw has a different body type this year with all the weight he's gained, but you're going to see what Javon Kinlaw could do in the joint practices from the defensive line. So I don't think, if anything, you almost want to start to monitor the body blows that a guy like Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis take, where it's fine today, but like you actually have to monitor that these last two games where like Braylon Allen doesn't need 25 to 30 touches throughout the preseason, counting the joint practices that are physical as well. So I don't see a drastic difference personally. I think you treat this joint practice this week as everybody's super involved and then see where you're at for game 3 and who really needs to get their feet under them.
What are you going to look for, Will, going into next week? And I think it still merits a mention. At this time next week, are we still talking about this Reddick thing being a situation as well? Oh,
God.
We got to talk about it at least once because now we're August 10th. So my panic meter is actually here now.
Yeah, a couple of different things I just want to quickly hit on. Leonard Taylor, like I've been in practice, I think 3 or 4 times. Didn't even hadn't seen him on the field once.
Right.
So
never saw a tweet about him.
I didn't see like one single play. Like Jalen Holmes was standing out. Like I got a bunch of shit for saying Jalen Holmes might make the roster. Leonard Taylor today, like making plays to me was kind of why he was the prospect he was. Where it's like, oh man, like this guy's awesome, and then like 2 weeks you're like, I didn't know you were on the roster. So obviously you want to see him build. Yeah, like Connor mentioned, I think next week with the joint practices, like they got their ass kicked in Carolina last year on the offensive side of the football. And I talked a little bit about this with Dan, but like you don't want to make too much of joint practices, but I also want them to go down there. I know talking to a bunch of people in that Jets locker room, like they went down there last year and it was 105 degrees and it was extremely humid. They stayed in a crappy hotel. Like there was a lot of like college D2, D3 vibes to like that type of scrimmage last year. And it looked like it. And I'd like to see them go down to Carolina, who's a bad football team, but played spunky on defense a little bit. They've got some nice pieces, obviously. They've added a little bit. Like they should go down there and dominate the way they dominated Washington. And then you don't need to see a lot on game day next week. But you still want to see Will McDonald and these guys build and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't see that much of a difference. Again, like Jamie and Sherwood getting like CJ Mosley level of respect from the staff is interesting, where Joe Tippmann, you knew that snapping issue. I don't know if he plays now next week. It's like, hey, maybe you got this past you. We don't want to risk you. The Reddick thing, you guys said August 5th. I was like August 12th because obviously they got the early game today. They've got the rest of today off, tomorrow off. Now they've missed a game check. But also like at this point, Reddick's already missed a game check now, and the workout bonus is like, I think he's kind of just like, hey man, like I'm good with like just continuing to eat money here. And I know it's not our money and it's easier said than done. But like at some point you wonder if Woody and Joe Douglas say, we're willing to negotiate while you're not here. Like that's got to be the next step. It doesn't even have to be him getting here. It's like, hey man, we're willing to talk numbers a little bit and like try to hammer out parameters of if you report, this is the number on the table from us. And not like this whole we don't negotiate with terrorists situation where like we don't even talk to our own player, That's what I want to see. I think that's at least the next reasonable step. I don't think Reddick's just going to walk in on Monday morning and say, hey guys, give me my $2.5 million back and we're good to go.
Right. Well, I think that's a really good point because it sounds like from everything we hear, the Jets are acting like, well, you haven't done anything here yet, so we're not going to talk to you until you do. And Haason Reddick's sitting there and going, I just had 4 double-digit sacks seasons.
They wanted to see practice film. Connor Hughes came on like 2 weeks ago and said the Jets wanted to see practice film before getting.
What do we do?
What are we doing?
Can you imagine? Like, I would feel a colossal disrespect if I'm Haason Reddick. That is, I don't know, man. And you're right. Like, at some point, you lose, right? At some point, like the Jets are trying to win a Super Bowl this year. Yes, Haason Reddick's losing a ton of money. He's losing in this too, but the Jets really, really lose when it's one of your closers out there that's going to close games. You need him out there. And we're seeing, there's a weird conversation right now where everybody's looking at it and going like, well, now Michael Clemens is playing. And I think the issue really at hand is you could have let Bryce walk, but purposely getting rid of JFM now looks really weird because if this Reddick situation hits DEFCON whatever, right? Like let's say Haason Reddick is not ready for week 1, which is that's serious panic time. But that's how things go. This is the NFL and it's the Jets. We've all been here. The situation, if it's JFM and Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald's in the Bryce role, Jets are probably okay, honestly. I'm not saying elite, but they're probably in pretty good shape, honestly. I really think that because even the McDonald play today, that spin move was gorgeous, and that's not roughing the passer. It's just not. So if I'm a coach, I'm looking at that and going, that's a good rep. Like, this is a situational pass rusher for us. That's a good rep. We need more of that from him. But you don't have JFM anymore. And I get Clemens had one play near the goal line where he ran over a tight end and made a stop. And that's what he does. He's very straight line, phone booth power at times. It was against tight end, but he has no pass rush bendability, flexibility, agility. He's not as strong at the point of attack as a run defender as JFM. Like, that's the big drop off to me. So that's where the Jets, in my opinion, have put themselves in a bind with Reddick, that you can't really play any games because you don't have JFM here anymore. And that was a money related decision. And at the time, we all kind of shrugged our shoulders. But now looking back at it, you're like, man, maybe that wasn't really well thought out for the sake of just money.
Didn't it feel like the timing too with JFM, like looking back at it, just was so confusing? Like, if you moved him pre-free agency or like started league year, like maybe you get a 2024 draft pick you could have used. They didn't. Yeah. They got basically the equivalent of what they got for Zach Wilson. And and JFM took literally a 50% pay cut to go to the Broncos when the Jets easily could have done that. They didn't want to, and whatever, that's the decision they make. But now that cap space is just sitting there. There's like $7 million the Jets have to play with. And yeah, you could say Devontae, that's what it's for, but you got to get your own guys signed first.
Right.
And then you worry about the future. Like, I don't know. Like, I just think so much back to last year where like Nick Bosa was the best defensive player in the league in 2022. Holds out. I think the Niners signed him September 5th. I don't know, man. Nick Bosa like took like 12 weeks to get back to like peak Nick Bosa, and he was 24 years old. And like, you know what I mean? And he's been in that system forever. Like, this isn't, they're not apples to apples. Yeah. Like, even Revis was the best defensive player in the league. He came back, he pulled his hamstring right away. Like, I don't want that to happen. That's why I feel like a month of camp is so beneficial for the Jets and for Reddick. So week one, you're not like getting warmed up. You're kind of, your body's ready to go. Like, whatever. He missed 3 weeks of camp. I don't really care. Now it's the last 3 weeks where they have a mini bye in there. They have like 6 days off. They only have 2 more joint practices. He's likely wouldn't have played in a preseason game. Like, there's only so many reps here now to get him ready. And honestly, like, you got to learn rush lanes too. Like, we don't talk much about that, but like Haason Reddick might rush differently and be used to rushing next to Fletcher Cox. Quinnen doesn't play like Fletcher Cox. So they're just, I don't know, that's stuff that we don't talk about a lot, but I think it needs to be ironed out at some point here, whether it's August 12th or 15th or 16th. Like, Giants joint practice later, like, I'm starting to get really like, oh man.
Yeah. We're less than a month from week one. It's like about that time. Like, it's not that far away where, like you said, like this sets up to like he comes in and he's not right until like week 5. And the Jets can't afford that. He's too important to their defense. Will McDonald had that one nice rep today. And again, that was a BS roughing call, but beyond that was relatively quiet. Obviously, we'll see what the tape says for guys like, you know, him and Olu, where we want to look a little deeper as to what they actually did. But this defense, as we talked about a lot last week, to really reach their potential, is going to need him out there. Few other tidbits just to wrap. And this is more so in the, like, we didn't see you at all. It's probably not a good sign. So, like, you'll get a guy like Kuntz, like, probably not going to make the team if you're, like, completely invisible at this point when Conklin and Rucker didn't even play today. Is he still going to have an uphill battle because he's playing pretty comfortably behind Allen and Davis at this point, but at least he had some moments today. The Jets also now have 2 other backs behind him that are going to be rotating in, so there's only so many touches that are going to get divided up. Carter Warren still seemed to be playing behind Max Mitchell. I think he had a penalty today. I mean, I have to imagine he's going to make the team. I'm just surprised he's as low on the depth chart as he seems to be. And outside of that, like, it's hard to make too many like judgments. You know, they got like Sire Barnes and like Surratt running around, but they're playing for like the 4th and 5th linebacker spot. So, like we said, a lot of this is sorting out roster spot 47 to 53. It does feel like guys like Taylor and JBC look like roster players. But beyond that, don't go crazy with the takeaways today outside of taking advantage of Peasley and Martinez running competent offenses that can help your betting decisions. And what the hell was Sam Hartman? Destroyed my underdog bet because he came in, beat his passing over, and then they pulled him and put Driscoll back in. I don't know
funky
what's
business.
On there. Some funny business going on
Shady
against the Badlands
business,
underdog.
Yeah.
Hartman. I hate Notre Dame. All right. Final thoughts, and then we will wrap as we got 10,000 other episodes coming in the next 5 or 6 days going into week 2.
Robert Saleh 8-2-1 in the preseason. They're really trying to establish that Baltimore Ravens, like, we don't care, it's the preseason, we will win the game.
They're
So
2-0 in 2025. They beat, or 2024. They beat New England in January, and now they won this game. That's it.
That's right. And they're technically 3-0. They beat Emmanuel Forbes in the joint practice like 7 times in a row. So they have that as well. So yeah, I mean, listen, overall, you want to operate like a functional football team across every unit, whether you're first, second, third, fourth string, which is legitimately camp bodies. So I thought it was good to see Peasley and Martinez be able to operate that way with those offensive linemen, because people laugh, but then you have an Xavier Newman that finds his way into the pivotal moment of a season last year. And those are the guys that are out there with Martinez and Peasley as well. So big for Brownlee. I've been screaming for it. And like Will makes a really good point that his slow camp start probably didn't help with this, but it's just, you're at the point where like throw him into the fire a little bit. I want to see what he could do, because I want to see what he could do with Tyrod. I'm not saying he needs to be out there with Rodgers. Obviously, the amount of money they've given Lazard's going to get those chances, but it just feels like Brownlee has legitimate red zone skills, and the Jets are not a good red zone team. They're not. Garrett is very slick and finds his way to get open and can make plays above the rim, but he's not the biggest guy. Conklin has a big body for the red zone. Mike Williams isn't healthy, so let's not entertain that right now. They don't have a lot in the red zone in terms of throwing the ball. I would see what Brownlee could do on the outside, where you could start to put Garrett in the slot in the red zone. So I kind of want to throw him into the fire a little bit more. But other than that, the last thing I'll ask you guys, and will you close it out too, your thoughts, like that Greg the leg kick, was that good from 65? I think it was.
God, he still got it.
He's
crazy.
The guys still got it. Couple quick things. You mentioned Xavier Newman. I think seeing him be starting at guard, basically like him coming out and like he seems to be one of those guys that like he'll probably stick on the roster now because he can play center and guard again. How well? That's up for debate. But like he does have that flexibility, and right now they don't. That's the one spot I still worry about on this team is like I feel like they're a body light on the interior. Just if anything happens to Tittman or AVT or Simpson, I don't feel like awesome about any of the options. Schweitzer is like a fine guy, but he gets hurt a lot as well. And Newman is who he is. He's a kind of a journeyman, like your sixth interior guy. I look for like this week. I think this is one of the biggest weeks of the preseason coming up. First time they're on the road. First time they're not practicing at MetLife and practicing at One Jets Drive. Does Mike Williams get 3 or 4 days worth of practice reps? Does Rodgers look good? Does the offensive line look good? How much do we see them? All those different types of things. I think the one thing I'm curious to see is these kickoff return and punt reps. We saw it live now. We saw a kickoff return. We saw what it looks like. Like, I'd like to see Izzy get 1 or 2 shots. I'd just like to see some of these guys get a shot just because Izzy has a chance of making the roster. And I'd like to see at least what he has, as opposed to some of these, the 6 and 7 string corners that they're kind of like there as just like camp bodies, and them getting reps there doesn't really, like, no offense, do it for me. The last thing I'll say, if Peasley plays as good as he played today throughout the preseason, I think it eliminates potentially the Jets' need to add that third veteran arm. I've felt like all summer, once camp cuts happen, the Jets will bring in that veteran arm to be their third string emergency quarterback. And like, not Tannehill, because I don't think that's realistic at this point in his career, but like that type of guy that like doesn't make a roster, the Jets need a third arm. If Peasley plays well enough, do you just say, hey, him and Travis will be practice squad and IR guys, and like we're gonna like let them sit in a room with Rodgers and Tyrod? Like, I'm not getting crazy here, but like, could you find your future third string quarterback there that could fight for a camp job for a couple of years? It's just something worth looking at because he operated the offense well. He had a nice practice from all accounts against Washington. If he goes down in Carolina and plays really well or plays solid and looks competent in this offense, you start to just feel like, hey man, like, God forbid Tyrod rolls an ankle and we need a quarter out of, I don't know, I'm just making it up, but like they need 6 plays out of Peasley. You're not like totally shitting your pants that he's in the game.
Yeah.
You'll probably still will, but like
Peasley, baby.
Yeah, like it just, that's what the good organizations do, is find guys in the preseason, undrafted guys. The Jets have done it at points. It'd be really nice if it was an offensive player though, not just always a DB or an edge rusher or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. I'll close with, I'm only saying this because I got a tweet about it today, and because the Jets still can't cover a freaking punt. Stop telling me Irv Charles is an ace special teamer.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
He's not good. He forced one fumble against Denver, which is awesome. He's been very bad on punt coverage since.
Did no one watch the Chargers game last year? Did no one watch
just like,
it?
what are we talking? They can't cover a punt. It's the little thing that drives me crazy. That and all the penalties early. Like,
I never want to hear again, you can't keep Brownlee on the roster because you need to keep Irv Charles as like the gunner.
It's just he missed a tackle and a penalty. It is like two special teams reps.
Let anyone else.
His body type's not a gunner body type either. Like he's a big like brolic, like on kickoff, sure, but like he's not like. Why can Quantez Stiggers and Eccles just not be your gunners? Like I don't.
Yeah.
Like Ashton Davis, your personal protector or something like that. Like I'm sorry. Like at some point, the reason Justin Hardy was good at special teams has nothing to do with like him being a big dude. He ran a 4.3. He's really fast in a straight line, and he has zero fear of making a play. Like that's the guys on special teams. And I just don't, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but like if they keep Irv Charles as a 7th receiver because of gunner, when he's like the 28th best gunner in the league, would really drive me nuts.
Bring Jeff Smith back if we're doing that role. Jeff Smith was better in this position than him. So that's just grumpy old men venting about special team spots. But overall, as we close, a positive day today for the Jets. Healthy. They got to win. Some of the young pups had some nice moments. You feel really good about Braylon Allen as like Breece's number 2. You feel really good that CR, we were ahead of the curve with the UDFA on the Leonard Taylor call because he looks like he's going to make the roster.
Watts made a play.
Yeah, Watts made a play. We got a Brownlee touchdown, and like that's it. Now we're on to Carolina. Sign Reddick. By the time we're recording War Room, by the time we're recording TOJ Talks, by the time we're recording the version of this next week, like I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like, just get it done. We need the pass rusher. So, Jets 1-0, yet to lose in 2024. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Go USA. Hoops are up 14-13 right now. Let's get a gold medal. Thank you, everyone. We will talk to you soon.